One New York state senator is even floating the idea of having New York withhold federal taxes and then the Empire State seceding to join Canada.
Instead of us all trying to illegally cross the border at night without them noticing, which is pretty hard because there's lots of us, that they should instead agree to let us be the Southeast province, a new province of Canada. New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont would combine and be a great new province as the Southeast province of Canada. Basically, everybody in these states are progressive Democrats who would fit in pretty well with the political philosophy of at least most of the Canadian elected officials. Well, in a new interview with Politico, State Senator Kruger, who chairs the powerful State Senate Finance Committee, also says that her state and the others should stop sending tax money to the federal government as part of their protest. New York State's controller says that the Empire State sends more than $361 billion a year, or provides 6.5% of the whole federal budget.
Blue state secession. That's the latest liberal cope for the rise of a new conservative age throughout our nation. We're going to see what's really behind these calls by defeated Democrats to leave the union. We're going to see a number of counties that actually did it, that actually voted to secede from their liberal-run cities on November 5th, and what it all means as we begin to enter the dawn of the new Trumpian golden age in our nation. Hey, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, celebrating the dawn of that new golden age of faith, family, and freedom right along with you. So if you want a front row seat on everything having to do with the rise of a new conservative age, then you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Also, we often talk about how we can maintain and build up the conservative way of life. And one crucial aspect of that is your routine. Staying strong physically and mentally isn't just about living longer. It's about living better. I'm partnered with Beam because they're a health and wellness company that's put in the time and rigorous research to craft science-backed solutions that truly optimize every system in your body from the moment you wake up until you lay your head down to sleep. More specifically, I've been using Beam Dream for a while now. I've been telling you guys about this. It's amazing. It's completely changed the way I sleep. I mean, I used to toss and turn while my mind raced at night, but since taking Dream, I fall asleep much faster and even sleep all throughout the night. It's an absolute game changer for me. Beam Dream is made up of the highest quality sleep promoting ingredients to help you unwind and get that deep sleep you need and deserve. It's become, frankly, a nightly ritual of mine that I look forward to each and every day. Plus, I never wake up feeling groggy the next morning. I even wake up before my alarm, which is something I never ever used to do. I have the best deal I've ever had with Beam. So now's your time to give Dream a try. Shop Beam's Cyber Monday sale all week long and get up to 50% off site-wide for a limited time. You heard that right. That's half off. Don't miss out on this offer. Click the QR code on the screen or use the link below to propel your wellness journey into the next stage today. So as Blue America continues to reel from the fallout from Kamala Harris's humiliating loss to the one and only Donald J. Trump, there is a growing movement among blue states to decisively and permanently secede from the nation. Now, many of you, I'm sure, heard about the prominent New York Democrat state senator who suggested that her state and its northeastern neighbors secede from the United States and join Canada to avoid President-elect Donald Trump's return to office. Liz Kruger, an ultra-left-wing nut who chairs the New York State Senate Finance Committee, came out and openly argued that New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Vermont all stood to disproportionately suffer under Trump's new administration with his proposed crackdown on illegal immigration and his promise of mass deportation. And so her concern is that New York, along with these other states, could see dramatic cuts in the amount of federal funding that they receive as retribution against their, I would add, rather insane sanctuary state policies. And so she's floating the idea that New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Vermont could combine and be a great new province as the southeast province of Canada. Now, of course, this ultra-woke senator is being resoundingly mocked and ridiculed, and not just for the completely legally implausible prospect of something like that ever remotely happening. But Kruger seems oblivious to the fact that Canada is poised to turn dramatically to the right in the next few months. Canada's about to elect their own Donald Trump in the guise of the Conservative Party populist leader Pierre Poilievre. Poilievre's Conservatives are poised to absolutely crush Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party in their upcoming parliamentary elections. So even if Kruger's fanciful suggestion were to come true, she would be staring in the face of Ottawa's own version of Canada First. So that just shows how insular and myopic she really is. But then there was a wonderful irony to her threat. I'm sure you heard about this. It surrounds something Donald Trump reportedly said to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau over the weekend. Trudeau was but the latest political figure to visit Mar-a-Lago, to kiss the ring, as it were. And he complained to Trump that Trump's threatened tariffs would end up sinking Canada's economy, to which Trump reportedly responded, well, then Canada ought to think about becoming a state, the 51st state, and maybe Trudeau could be their governor. He told Trudeau that if he cannot handle his list of demands without ripping the U.S. off in trade, then maybe Canada should really become a state, or maybe make it into two states, a liberal one and a conservative one, right? Alberta is often referred to as the Texas of Canada, and Trudeau could become the governor of the liberal one. So obviously, of course, the irony here would be that these four states that want to secede and join Canada would only end up finding themselves incorporated right back into the United States under a Trump presidency. So stay with Canada and get your own version of Trump with Pierre Poilievre and Canada First, or Canada ends up joining the USA and you get put back under Trump's leadership. Either way, you ain't going anywhere. That's the irony in all this. And to make things even worse for this Democrat, there are now reports that New York City Mayor Eric Adams is already cooperating with the incoming Trump administration and closing migrant shelters throughout the city in anticipation for mass deportations. Check it out.
In the last month, the city has closed 11 shelters, 1,800 rooms at places like the Americana Inn on West 38th Street, the Voyage Hotel in Long Island City, and the Hotel RL in Brooklyn. But that's not all. There are also plans to close upstate hotels in Albany, Dutchess, Erie, Orange, and Westchester counties that currently house 900 asylum seekers. Randall's Island, which has about 2,000 migrants, is scheduled to close in February. It's saving the city a ton of money.
We've been able to save over $2 billion. So to me, that's the real story here. And now we're going to continue to manage this crisis and make sure that we're able to downsize.
Now, by the way, you heard that right. The cost, the skyrocketing cost for illegal immigration is absolutely mind-blowingly absurd. Check out these figures from Doge, from the Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Elon and Vivek. In 2023 alone, 1 year alone, illegal immigration cost taxpayers in our nation a whopping $150.7 billion freaking dollars. 1 year alone. By comparison, that's about half of what we spent for the whole of World War I or the entire Apollo space program. Again, just to underscore, the last 3.5 years of the Biden administration cost us upwards of $500 billion. Yes, that's trillion with a T on illegal immigration. So even Democrat officials in New York have had enough. Now, that said, we do need to talk a bit about the prospects of secession and how they're very, very real today. Secession is actually a very complex phenomenon with a broad-ranging spectrum of applications. We talk a lot about this on our channel because secession really is a worldwide phenomenon that's gone into overdrive since 1991. Since 1991, I believe it's nearly 40 countries have been added to the world map. So the world's been literally splitting apart. Seceding is really the sort of the du jour politics today. And we're seeing it in our own country, albeit in micro form. So, for example, take St. George, Louisiana. Right? St. George is technically the newest city in the nation. It was formed by nearly 100,000 residents living on the southern side of Baton Rouge who grew sick and tired of the dying, decaying rot of their Democrat-run city. And so they decided to take matters into their own hands, and they held a referendum and voted in favor of seceding from the city, which after a protracted court case, they successfully did. Now, this is what's known as scaled secession. That's the technical term for it. Scaled secession. It's also known as de-annexation, wherein more and more districts are actively trying to secede from their politically liberal city hall and form their own legally recognized cities. A lot of people don't know this, but the Democrat-dominated city of Memphis in Tennessee, they've shrunk significantly over the last few years, precisely through this process of de-annexation. So districts such as South Cordova and Southwind and Rocky Point, they're no longer part of Memphis anymore. And then, of course, we have the whole county secessionist movements, right? We've been tracking very closely with the Greater Idaho movement. We've interviewed some of their leaders. Thus far, upwards of 12 counties and counting in eastern Oregon have voted to secede from the Antifa-ridden Portland with the hopes of joining up with their neighboring red state, Idaho. And a lot of people don't realize this, but back on November 5th, just a few weeks back, a number of counties actually voted to study the possibility of forming their own state. So, for example, 7 counties in Illinois voted to pursue the possibility of basically seceding from ultra-liberal Chicago and forming their own state. And the same thing happened. Several red counties in California are seriously pursuing the same course. San Bernardino County most recently voted to study the process and prospects involved in seceding from their increasingly failed state, led by the ultra-incompetent Gruesome Newsom. So this is this notion of scaled secession from municipalities forming their own cities or counties pursuing joining up with neighboring like-minded states or even forming their own state. Secession is a very real dynamic in our nation, and it all points to the fact that we're living in a time of tremendous transition. It's a transition that centers on a political realignment where the old liberal order is dying and a new conservative civilizationalist order is rising, not just here in the United States, but all over the world, with the politics of both being seen as mutually incompatible. The saving grace is that once the new conservative civilizationalist order becomes fully dominant, the golden age, right? Once that new paradigm, that new political paradigm becomes fully dominant, things should begin to return to some kind of equilibrium. Don't forget, New York moved overwhelmingly to the right on November 5th. This state senator will obviously not like the fact that New York shifted 12 points to the right just a few weeks ago. Kamala got only half the margin of victory that Biden got back in 2020. Trump came within 5 points of winning freaking New Jersey. Even some of New York City's most blue boroughs shifted to the right. So blue cities are turning right. Blue states are turning right, which means that secessionist impulses promise to be increasingly quelled. But until then, with the new Trumpian age about to begin, the threats to leave the Union, especially from the radical left, may just be getting started.